everyone, my name is Rafaela H2 and I am the historian of Group 13. Our topic is Bloodless Revolution plus Aquino and Ramos programs. So here are the timelines and key events. So first, in 1972, Ferdinand Marcos declares martial law under Proclamation number 1081. Citing the need to suppress communist rebellion and civil unrest. This move suspends the constitution, closes Congress, and allows Marcos to rule by decree. And in 1981, martial law is officially lifted, but Marcos retains tight control through new laws and military power. Political opponents are still harassed, arrested, and silenced, and the country remains under authoritarian rule. On August 21, 1983, Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., a prominent opposition leader and critic of Marcos, is assassinated upon arriving at Manila International Airport after 3 years in exile. So when he arrived at the airport, he was shot in his left ear and eventually dying instantly. His death shocks the nation and fuels widespread of anger against the regime. On November 3, 1985, facing growing protests and pressure, Marcos calls a snap presidential election to be held earlier than scheduled, hoping to legitimize his rule amid rising opposition. So si Marcos kay nagpa-kon siyang snap election where he's so confident nga siya makadaog. And on February 7, 1986, the snap election is held between Marcos and opposition candidate Corazon Cory Aquino, where the wife of Ninoy Aquino. The election is marred by widespread reports and vote rigging and intimidation. So the people believes that Marcos cheated on snap election. So which fuels the rages of the Filipino nga mag people power revolution. So, on February 22, 1986, Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile and General Fidel V. Ramos secretly withdraw their support for Marcos, leading to reports of planned military coup and shifting momentum towards the opposition. So, on February 23 to 24, 1986, Cardinal Jaime Sin calls on Filipino to peacefully gather at the EDSA. So kani si Cardinal Jaime Sin he's a priest, and he calls on Filipino to peacefully gather at the EDSA shrine to support the defecting military leaders. Millions join the People Power movement, creating a massive peaceful demonstration demanding Marcos leave the power. So on February 25, 1986, with the military and public turned against him, Marcos flees the Philippines and goes into exile in Hawaii. Corazon Cory Aquino is sworn in as a first female president and symbol of restored democracy. So that's all. That's the timeline. And next we'll have the cause and effects and significance to be reported by Vince.
Good day, everyone. My name is Vince Sergeant Lee Hedor, and I am the analyst of the group. So, since you already know the key events of the timelines, so let's move forward to the most important events in the Philippine history, which is the EDSA People Revolution. So this historic event, also known as the Bloodless Revolution, happened from February 22 to February 25 rather, 1986. So along Alfonso Epifanio de los Santos Avenue or EDSA in Metro Manila. So It was a peaceful movement where millions of Filipinos united to restore the democracy after years of dictatorship under Ferdinand Marcos Sr. So, first, let's talk about the causes of the revolution. So, unsa man yung mga causes niya? So the first one is abuse of power under martial law. So during martial law, President Ferdinand Marcos had absolute control over the government. So many Filipinos experienced human rights violations, censorship, and arrest without due process. So imagine that. So the next one is corruption and economic decline. So the Marcos regime was also marked by widespread corruption. Billions of pesos were lost due to the misuse of government funds. So and leading to economic hardship and poverty among the people in the Philippines. And the next one is the assassination of Aquino, 1983. So the murder of the opposing leader Benigno Aquino Jr. awakened the Filipino people. So his death became a symbol of fight for freedom and justice. And the next one, electoral fraud, 1986 snap election. So Marcos called for a snap election against Corazon Aquino, but it was marred by massive cheating and fraud. So tako ay impact sa mga Pinoy since ang mga vote sa mga Pilipino ay cheat nila ba. So this angered the people and pushed them to take action. No. So next one is church and civil society involvement. So the Catholic Church, led by Cardinal Sin, played a huge role by calling the Filipinos to support the peaceful protests. Civil society groups, professionals, and ordinary citizens all joined together in unity. So nag-join sila tanan aron ma-stop and ma-prevent gani ang continuous nga dictatories ni President Marcos Jr. Senior rather. So the next one is let's move on to the effects of EDSA People Power Revolution. So this peaceful uprising didn't just change the government, it changed the entire direction of the nation. So end of Marcos regime and exile of the Marcos family. After 4 days of peaceful protests, the pressure of millions of Filipinos and withdrawal of support from the military forced Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos to flee the country and go into exile in Hawaii. So dito sila sa Hawaii. So this marked the official end of 20 years of authoritarian rule. So finally, freeing the Philippines from dictatorship. So next is the restoration of democracy. So the people's movement led to the peaceful transfer of power to Corazon Aquino. The window of Nino Aquino, her presidency, symbolized the return of democratic leadership and the end of one more rule. For the first time in years, Filipinos could once again freely choose their leaders. So muna ni siya atong na-regain na sa mga Filipino ilang rights. So maka-vote na sila, maka-choose na sila kung kinsay ng mga leader nga. So the next one is ratification of 1987 Constitution. So to ensure that no future president could abuse power again, a new constitution was drafted or implemented and ratified in 1987. So this constitution strengthened democratic institutions, promoted checks and balances, and guaranteed civil and political rights for the Filipinos. So the next one is return to press freedom and civil rights. So under martial law, the media was heavily censored, newspapers were shut down, and journalists were silenced. After its press freedom was restored, and Filipinos regained their freedom of speech, assembly, and expression. So nana sila yan ng freedom of right, freedom to express their feelings. So it became a new era of the open dialogue and participation in governance. And lastly, renewed nation pride. The success of revolution brought a strong sense of unity and of pride among the Filipinos. So the world admired how the Philippines achieved change through the peaceful means, without violence and bloodshed. It proved that the Filipino spirit is brave, compassionate, and capable of great things when united. So, napalilas. So, inspiration of other movements. So, the EDSA revolution become a global inspiration. So, nahimo siya inspiration sa other countries. So, other countries such as South Korea, East Germany, and South Africa look to the Philippines as an example of peaceful protest and defeat oppression. So EDSA become a symbol of hope and democracy, not only the Filipinos, but for the people around the world. So now, lastly, the significance of the EDSA revolution. So what is the significance of the EDSA revolution? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 5 significance. There is up. So the first one is it proves that the non-violent action can bring about real political change. So the next one is it restored democracy after years of dictatorship. Okay, so it empowered ordinary citizens to realize that they have the power to shape the nation's future. So next is the rise of Corazon Aquino showed that moral leadership and people's unity can overcome oppression. Until today, EDSA remains a symbol of hope, unity, and freedom, reminding every Filipino that real change starts with people come together for the just cause. Thank you.
Good morning to each and everyone. We are the Group 13 reporter and our topic is Bloodless Revolution. So without further ado, let's dive into our topic. So our topic is Bloodless Revolution. So imagine a nation where we're silenced by fear, where speaking to the government could cost your freedom or even your life. That is Bloodless Revolution in the year 1986. It was called Bloodless Revolution because it was a peaceful movement where millions of people gathered around in Epifanio de los Santos Avenue or EDSA in Metro Manila. Filipino citizens, students, priests, nuns, and soldiers gathered around to overthrow the oppressive and abusive alleged Ferdinand E. Marcos. So, what are the factors that sparks to overthrow the President Ferdinand E. Marcos? So, here are the factors. Abuse of power, because during this time, on September 21, 1986, he declares to lengthen his presidential candidacy and to declare martial law on his people, which means the president alone controls all the power. Next is electoral fraud. Ferdinand E. Marcos was allegedly involved in electoral fraud because during his time, he decreases the number of age that Filipino can vote from 18 years old to 15 years old, and also he allows oral voting, and also allows illiterate or uneducated people to be able to vote during his time. And lastly, last factor of eagerness of Filipinos to overthrow the president is his authoritarian type of ruling. So abuses his power, abuses his people. That's why Filipino citizens are done with his abusive type of ruling in the Philippines, which lasts for 20 years or 2 decades. So after the President Ferdinand E. Marcos was overthrew and fled to Hawaii, Corazon Aquino became president through a snap election in the year 1986 to 1982. So, what are the key programs of Corazon Aquino? First is she initiated peace talk with NPA, MILF, MNLF. So she has programs that help Filipino unite as one. So restoration of liberties. She released political prisoners that is against him, such as Fidel and I forgot the one. So after the presidential candidacy of Cory Aquino, Fidel Ramos was voted as president, and his programs are Philippines 2000 vision, which Philippines was aimed to make the Philippines fully industrialized in the year 2000. And also in one of her programs is a social reform agenda, which aimed to lessen poverty, hunger, and more access for quality education here in Philippines. And next is anti-crime and anti-drugs, which strengthened the law enforcement and peacekeeping along with the Filipino citizens in the society. So, what are the contemporary connections from Bloodless Revolution to political leaders like Corazon Aquino and Fidel Ramos and their programs? So, the contemporary connection is the Bloodless Revolution is to continue inspire people to protect democracy and fight for corruption and fight for justice and stand for truth, because democracy is about people's power. And for Cory Aquino leadership, it teaches us or reminds us that moral integrity and people empowerment are vital for good and good political and good governance rather. So, and for Ramos, it laid the groundwork foundation for economic progress and modernization and peace effort, and that still reflect in our current policies. So after that contemporary connection, the group's insight or the group concluded that the Bloodless Revolution with the leadership of Corazon Aquino and Fidel Ramos makes one of the significant event in the Philippines, because it symbolizes that Filipino people refers to revolt with peace and democracy over dictatorship was implemented during this time. The power of peace over violence and the strength of Filipino spirit was there, because that was the true democracy is. And as Filipinos, it was our duty to preserve the lessons from IDSA revolution and to stand for truth and stand for justice. So that is our report, or that my part is. Thank you for your attention.